Well, good evening, everybody. It is Blair Nightingale here for Market Monday. We are here every single week. This channel, whether you're joining us on Facebook, on YouTube, as I said, Blair Nightingale, Market Monday. It is time, 6 p.m. Central Time. We are here every single week. It is Market Monday. Today, very simple topic. I want to help you guys understand something. When will this market go back to normal? I had a friend text me today even saying, hey, what is going on with the market? What is everybody over at Tradeway saying about this right now? He's definitely been looking at the markets. So maybe we've got some folks out there tonight. You've been watching the markets. You normally do that. And you've got some questions about what's going on. Maybe you're just interested in the markets tonight. You're not even someone who's yet very active, or maybe not even active at all, but you'd like to be, and you want to know what's going on. And this is this question that is, I'm going to say it this way, floating around right now. When's the market going to go back to normal? And I can tell you, I've been doing this now for a little while. It's a question I used to ask. I used to make these statements, and I hear this question still today, and I have the entire time that I have been involved with trading in the stock market. And it's this question, or it's a variation of the question. What is happening in the market, or when is it going to go back to normal? When is it going to go back from being crazy to something stable, right? And we've talked about this a little bit in the last few weeks, but I want to go into it a little bit differently tonight. And I want to give you a perspective on that very question. Sometimes it's not even a question. Sometimes it's this. This is what I'll hear. When the market finally calms down, that's when I'm going to learn. When the market finally gets some stability, when it's normal, that is when I'm going to be able to trade. That's when I'm going to feel confident. Well, I'm going to help you work beyond that tonight. I'm going to give you some keys that you need to hear, to know, to apply, that are going to help you do something that most folks who don't have this information are not going to be able to do. It's very easy. It's very easy to get stuck in this question. Hey, when are we going back to normal here? Right? When are we going back to normal? And I'm going to make some comments on that. Of course, speaking of comments, there's our friend Jeffrey. You guys will notice over on Facebook side of things. I know some of you guys are joining us from YouTube as well. He's popping a comment in there, right on this side of my screen. If you want to say hi, Susan is tagging some friends in there. You'll notice that if you've got some other people in your life that think maybe want to hear this session, they want to be connected to Market Mondays, there is a phenomenal opportunity for you and I in the stock market trading on just this little guy right here, or perhaps on the laptop you're looking at home that I'm looking at here as well at my home base in East Texas. It's very, very accessible, and we've talked about that at length on previous broadcasts as well. But I want you to know that I would love to hear from you. You can comment. You can throw your comments in the box. You can tag some other folks who maybe want to hear about this as well. Let me know where you're at. I'm getting some weather reports tonight. Howdy, howdy, 61 and blue skies in Colorado Springs. Susan says, beautiful, partially cloudy skies here in San Antonio, Texas. So we're getting the weather report for Colorado and Texas. A little cloudy outside here tonight. And a lot of folks saying, it feels a little cloudy in the market. I like to tell people in the program here at Tradeway, you got to think about it. This isn't actually in my notes, but let me give you this tonight. This is going to help you. You got to think about it in terms of trading. We got to think about it like this. You've got a car, you've got a driver, and you've got road conditions, okay? The most important of these is the driver, and that's something people know I talk about all the time at Tradeway. We want to help develop you, the driver, to know how to confidently navigate your trading vehicle to the destination that you want to get to. You know, people are out there driving in the markets. Some of them are great drivers. Some of them not so much. You wouldn't want your loved ones to be in the car with them. You wouldn't want your dollars to be in their trading account. So We've got a driver. We've got a system. We've got a vehicle that drives you, right? Something that helps you navigate the roads of the market, if you will. And then we've also got the road conditions, right? Just like real road conditions, we may have ice. We had plenty of ice talking about weather in Texas a few weeks ago. In fact, I grew up in the snow and we had more ice. I had a what's the word I'm looking for? I had a sheet of ice completely covering my entire vehicle. I took pictures of it. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. You've got road conditions. Sometimes the road conditions, you just don't drive, right? Sometimes you go, okay, I'm going to drive, but it's cloudy, it's foggy, it's dark, right? Whatever the case might be, you might change the way you drive based on the road conditions. And we've learned how to, as drivers, look at the road conditions and say, okay, this is the appropriate response that I need for these road conditions. Sometimes it's sunny, it's dry, it's good to go. You're going to open it up, right? You're going to, maybe in other circumstances, not drive at all, drive slow. As I said, the market is the same way. We need to learn to navigate trading in the markets by one piece of the puzzle, understanding what are the current conditions? What are the current conditions? And when I introduce this idea, a lot of the times it does lead to the question, which is our topic tonight. When will the market go back to normal? What does that really mean in translation with what I'm talking about already? It means the market conditions don't make any sense to me. So I don't know how to drive. Now, one of two things is going to happen at that point. Okay. Some folks, I'm not necessarily speaking to anybody out there tonight, but some folks are just going to drive anyway. They're just going to drive however they feel. I want to get to my destination and I want to get there faster. And I heard that somebody else did it. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it this way. And they take on a certain level of risk that they may not even be aware of. There are risks to driving in certain conditions when that kind of condition is not safe. So then we get to the other group. They feel confused by what's happening in the market. I know there's an opportunity there, but I don't really know how to make sense of it. And so for that reason, I've had some exposure to it, but for that reason, it just feels chaotic. It just feels mysterious. It just feels like it's unpredictable. Like I can't know what's going to happen. Okay? So that's one of the things I want to help you with. Now, we've also covered some of this, in particular, market tone on previous broadcasts. And I mention this every week. You can always go back to the catalog on Facebook, on YouTube. I would say it's probably easier to do on YouTube as far as going further back in time. To watch previous episodes of information that we may have covered. You can learn a lot of different things on those older broadcasts. I'm reading some comments here. Susan says, I don't trust me yet driving my trading account. Well, that is a process, right? That is a process that we are all in, okay? So I understand that completely, and that is, of course, what we're here to help you do. So I'm going to break this down basically into three easy things tonight. When I respond to this question, when will things go back to normal? And at some point here, I'm going to pull up the S&P 500 chart, something we look at almost every week on Market Monday. Something I want to do is give you a practical idea of, hey, what's going on in the market and what do I see? So I'm going to show you that today as well. I think this is going to be really helpful for some folks. Number one, when will things go back to normal? Here's the answer I have to that. May be surprising to many of us, and it's this. Things are not abnormal. Okay, right now, I don't see anything abnormal happening. Now, we may see something that we feel is unfamiliar. We may see something that is confusing. But that is different than abnormal. And I want to help us define what normal is so that we can get out of this feeling that we are confused by what's happening. And let me say this. If we think we know what the market should be doing, you know what that does? That sets us up for confusion. Based on what this analyst said, based on what I heard in this news article, based on the economy right now, based on this economic number, right? Different folks are going to look at different things. We're going to have different levels of understanding of different things that move the market. But anytime, no matter who we are, that we think, oh, the market should be doing this. Well, then we set ourselves up to be disappointed if the market ever does something different. Because guess what? For you and me, the market is just going to do whatever it wants to do. And if it's doing it, that's a good enough reason for us to go, okay, I'm going to let, as we like to say at Tradeway, I'm going to let the gorilla lead. When we are going to trade, it's like dancing with the gorilla. Who gets to lead? Well, you can try, but it's going to be very difficult for you and me if we try to lead. And that is what the market is like. So whenever we switch into, well, this is what it should do. Now, I analyze the market every day. I help our students understand, here are the things I think you need to watch for. But I always stop short of guessing, of predicting, because there's no point in predicting when I know that I don't actually know. And what's helpful for you tonight is to say, anytime I assume that I know what the market is going to do, I may put myself in a position where I end up being confused. Because sooner or later, eventually, the market's going to do something different than you and I say it should do. It will surprise us. It does not always move according to the logic that we apply to the market. Now, we have a way of navigating this. It doesn't mean we're in the dark, but feeling like we know what's going to happen is not the way to navigate it. And it sets us up to say, when are things going to be normal? And in that moment, if that's what we've been saying and thinking, then what we mean is, when is it going to do the thing that I think it should be doing? I want to help people out there understand and ultimately trade in a way where they allow the gorilla to lead. So the first thing is actually right now, things aren't abnormal. Now, there are unique circumstances. We've got COVID, we've got stimulus bills. But in my history trading, and certainly the decades of experience that others here at Tradeway have in the markets, things may be unique, but unique things coming along in and of itself is not that unique. There's always new things happening. And certainly somebody says, well, Blair, I would say 2020, that's pretty unique. I would agree with you. But where we are right now in the market, I would not say is abnormal. We need to understand economies, they expand and they contract. They go up and they go down. That in and of itself, generally speaking, that's not abnormal. Okay? Markets go up and markets go down. That also is not abnormal. Okay? Markets, we talked about this several weeks ago. It may have been just over a month ago. We talked about markets retracing, markets correcting, and markets crashing. Retracing meaning it's just moving from support and resistance in the pattern. Correcting meaning we've dropped 10% from the high or more, and a crash, a bear market we talked about, being 20%. So let me just zoom out for a second here. When we get knowledge about how the markets move, when we get knowledge about how to navigate the different things the market does, we stop feeling confused. We stop feeling intimidated. We stop feeling disappointed. All those negative emotions are things we can deal with when we get understanding about the market, road conditions, and how to drive on it. That's an incredibly empowering thing that we can give to ourselves, because most of the time those negative emotions are present because we don't have that understanding. And that is one of those simple things. Things aren't as abnormal as they may seem. I'm going to move on to number 2. And I think this is important to add. Number 2 tonight, when will things go back to normal? Well, number 2, I would say, yes, things are not really abnormal. Okay? Things are not abnormal, but things are right now, and I'm going to show you the chart. Things are in transition. There is transition happening. And in some way, there's always transition. I just talked about retracements, corrections, and crashes. We're looking at maybe being on the verge of a correction, okay? Maybe a bigger correction. We don't know that yet. But times where those kinds of things, like a correction, a 10% fall from the high or more, that can feel very unstable. It can feel like, oh, the market is crazy. Now, I want to show you this. I'm going to have to just pull it up very quickly here. I want to go ahead and show you the chart. And this is something that, as I mentioned, we look at just about every week on here. And it's interesting to be able to do this with you guys every week, because we get to see the progression of how things are playing out, things that we talked about last week. Well, what did that mean this week? And I'm just going to give you a preview here. You guys can see my screen now. I'm not going to go into in-depth technical analysis tonight, which is a very fancy way of saying I'm not going to go in depth on how I read this chart. We've looked at that quite a bit in previous broadcasts as well. But what I want to show you here is, the market has been back. If we just focus on it day to day, it's felt like, it's kind of back and forth. It's kind of up, then it's down, sometimes in the same day. But when we look at the big picture, something we talked about on Thursday, we really are still within the pattern that we've been in since November. Now, the pattern is showing signs that it is changing. To look more closely at that, I would recommend going back to Thursday's episode where we looked at this more closely. But it is changing. So when is the market going to go back to normal? Well, there's nothing really abnormal happening here as a whole. It's really not. But you might say, well, Blair, the last week has been kind of confusing to me. Well, the market, aside from what I said in point 1, the market has been transitioning, okay? It has been transitioning. We drew this line on here last week. Well, what happened? We made a high, we went down, made a lower high. That shows us that it's weakening. Again, we talked about this on the last Thursday, a very simple tool that you and I could use in charting to let us know, hey, when are things getting more risky? When are things getting as though they're slowing down? Maybe I ought to be careful, right? Maybe I ought to say, I'm not going to buy stocks here. Maybe I ought to look at some protection if I have any positions in the market already. I know a lot of folks out there joining us probably have some market exposure. You start to see these lower highs and you say, ooh, that's weakening. And so while I didn't predict this drop, I'm not surprised by that drop. Remember, I said, I don't try to force what I think the market's going to do. So no matter how many articles or news or tips or CNBC interviews that say the market's going to go up, 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 if the chart is starting to look what I would say soft, where these lower highs are coming in, then you ought to prepare for something like that to happen. Now, this day tested the same low as this day, and it moved up. But here's what I want you to see. What did we hit today? We went up to that same line and dropped off, sold off. When I looked at the market this morning, it was up high. It was up 35 something points. By the end of the day, it had lost all of that and gone down 20 points. So you say, Blair, it's up today and then it's down today and Friday was up, but then Thursday was down. When is this market going to go back to normal? Well, I can tell you that there are opportunities for folks in this environment for two things. One, for those who have skill sets to actually actively trade this, and others who have different skill sets, as I said, recognize the road conditions and go, I can protect my money. One of our coaches used to say, cash, meaning you have your investments in cash, that's a position. Cash is a position. That's a protective position when the market doesn't make sense, or perhaps it's icy and just not a good place to be driving. Things are in transition. I talked about this more on Thursday, but we've got market rotation, very normal. Again, not an abnormal thing to have happen, where certain groups of stocks, like technology stocks, investors are pulling their money out of that and putting it into safer stock sectors and different areas of the market because of the way the economy is changing and some other factors that we talked about on Thursday. When we have understanding, when we have perspective, we're able to feel settled because it's not so unfamiliar. And when it's not unfamiliar, there's some confidence, there's some decisiveness. And my goal for you would be to be able to look at the market and say, I feel like I can be confident and decisive in this market, in any market. That's what we aim to teach you to do, because I'm going to finish what I'm saying here with returning to this point, because I think this is really important. I must be careful that I don't say the market is just being crazy. And what we kind of mean, I think, and this is what I've always meant when I said it, the market's just not clear to me, right? When actually, again, what is most unclear in that moment, and again, the moments that I've said that, what's unclear is not necessarily the market. What's unclear is how do I plan to safely engage the market? That is what is unclear, right? The road conditions may be very easy to see, but if I don't know how to engage with that, well, then it's not easy to see for me. And that means I'm not confident. I don't know what to do. If I've got money in the market in that position, then there's plenty of anxiety. And if I don't have money, but I think, well, isn't there opportunities? Blair, you're saying there's still opportunities. Then there's anxiety there because you feel as though you're missing out. So what do we need? We need a system and we need a plan, right? The system is the vehicle. And we need a plan. We need training. We need to know, how do I drive that vehicle in these conditions? But it's very important to see. I'm going to go ahead and close this. Let's make sure we don't have any questions here. Yes, I see your question there, Jeffrey. I'll come to that in just a second. We need to make sure that we are not feeling as though the market has to do what we think it has to do. Okay? I'm going to read some of these comments here. Leading the gorilla is a good way to break an arm or potentially lose an arm, right? That depends on how much we fight the movement of the market. And that's the big picture here tonight, folks, is really being able to look at the market and go, I have been in a place where it makes me anxious, and I've come to a place where it makes me excited. Just think about that for a second. I've moved from being anxious about the markets to being excited about the markets. I feel like I'm missing out. I feel like I know what to do. I feel like it doesn't make any sense. I feel like I know how to follow even when I don't know what's going to happen. Because traders don't need to know what's going to happen to make money in the markets. The only thing they need to know what's going to happen on is, what am I as the driver going to do? That's the key. I can't know what the market's going to do, but I can be confident because I know what I'm going to do. And that's the difference. Now, we've all heard stories. We've talked about GameStop on here before. Well, what about so-and-so who got into this and bought 1,000 shares of this or $100,000 of that stock? And there are always going to be stories in the headlines of somebody somewhere who did a Hail Mary on XYZ stock, but how does that serve you? How does that serve your situation? How does that serve your family? Ultimately, it doesn't do us any good if somebody somewhere did something on some stock. What I want to do is help you know this is how I can navigate this. I used to be anxious and now I'm confident. And that's the difference. Jeffrey has a great question here. The crash last year, let me zoom out on this. I feel like somehow we look at this every single week and it makes sense. It's pretty phenomenal. Okay, so there's just kind of a bigger view of the whole thing. So Jeffrey says, the crash and quick recovery last year, was that abnormal? Well, the crash was abnormal in one way and not in another, okay? It was abnormal in that it was the fastest it's ever dropped, right? As far as I know, in my history, in my knowledge of history, we've never closed the entire economy just like that, right? Just out of nowhere, we just shut everything down. Well, that dropped the market. But then we also had unprecedented, there's that word, stimulus, things like that. So was that abnormal? Well, that just depends on what you compare it to. It certainly was unique. But does a crash in the market have to feel crazy, anxious, confusing, distressing? It didn't feel that way to me last year. I traded more personally in that time. I increased what I was doing in that time. Okay. So that is a different way of looking at it, isn't it? So, and then of course we had a bull market essentially in here. I mean, let me go to the screen here. I mean, you had almost what's a brand new bull market there. I mean, it was just zooming up. Okay. That was concentrated in certain areas of stocks, as you can imagine, say tech stocks, like maybe a company like Zoom, technology like we're using right now. It's been very, very popular during the lockdowns. And so a lot of those things were a part of that new zooming bull market, if you will. But was that abnormal? Well, we had a pretty crazy recovery, but low interest rates, government printing money, stimulus packages, intervention from the government, and raging bull markets, that in and of itself is not abnormal. Now, the conditions under which it happened were new, but that's what I was saying at the beginning. There may be unique conditions that come along in each instance, but in other instances, other unique things happen that created similar things. We had a big crash in 2008. That wasn't the same thing, but it was a crash. Crashes come and crashes go, right? This is probably, I'm not going to predict, but given what the markets have done from the very beginning, this won't be the last crash we ever see. And it likely won't be the last bull run of this magnitude that we ever see. We'll have to wait and see what happens in the future. But the point is that it being abnormal in the sense of there's no way to follow this, there's no way to know what's happening, there's no way to navigate it, that simply is not the case. And of course, I understand that that's not how you mean it, Jeffrey, but I think that is a great question for sure. Troy says, I like it when the price goes down. Ha! Isn't that, I mean, even that is probably a revelation for some of us. I think of myself not that long ago, not so many years ago, and somebody says to me, Blair, you know, I actually like it when the price is going down. I would have thought, really? Why? Well, the rest of Troy's comment, I like when the price goes down. I set my alarm for a potential entry. I would like to see this chart break out of the wedge. You say, well, what is he talking about? Well, he's looking at the chart with eyes to see some of the things that are happening on there. He's seeing specific patterns that he's been trained to see and what to do if those patterns go A or if those patterns go B. That knowledge shifts us from I don't know what's happening to I know what to watch for. And I don't feel like I need to guess what the market is going to do. As I always say, it's never guessing, gambling, or going for it. Okay, never. That's not real trading. Hey, that's not to say I've never done that. Okay, it takes one to know one. I have done that. Trust me. That's how I know that ain't trading. That's not trading. Okay, so we want to come to a place of understanding because it gives us confidence and peace to navigate the conditions. So no matter where you are tonight, you're in the market, 401k, you want to be a trader, you are actively trading, you just heard about this and you're interested wherever you are. That's the journey of saying, you know, I've heard a lot about this GameStop. I've heard a lot about online trading, but how do I actually do this? Well, you need to be trained as a driver. We need to show you the car and we need to get you out on good road conditions. I will close this part with this. I'm going to tell you, say, Blair, well, what do you say the road conditions are right now? Well, I would say if I leave this part of it out, okay, how experienced of a driver are you? Because that would be one of my questions. But if I leave that out of the question for now, and I say, as we talk about on Thursdays, hot or not, and I said this last Thursday, and it has not changed till tonight, Monday night, is the market hot or not? For me right now, I say not. It is not. It is not. It has not done, it's not melting down, okay? But it is in a place where it is, as I mentioned already, changing. It's really changing, and we want to see the pattern go into a place where it's reliable, predictable, and repeatable. Okay, reliable, predictable, repeatable. So you say, well, when will the market go back to normal? In this sense, normal, you could say, well, is it in a pattern? Now, I'm going to pull this up again because I want to make sure you guys get this tonight. We're only at 30 minutes here. Let's pull it back up here. Make sure y'all can see it. And we'll go back to the S&P, right where we were looking at before. Is the pattern still intact? Well, arguably, yes. We've talked about uptrends on here before. Yes, it is. But is it in danger? Is it in transition? Sure looks that way. Sure looks that way. I mentioned a little bit earlier why I think that is the case. Namely, the fact that it's making lower highs. Lower highs. And it did again today. So you say, well, Blair, does that mean that it's normal? It's normal in the sense that it's still in the pattern, but I am taking very little to no risk. And that is what we are recommending for our students. Very little to no risk, because right now, today, right, it is definitely in a transitional point. And so we're being cautious. Jeffrey says the market's in soft serve mode. Troy, normal is boring. Well, there's no doubt. You can hear that coming from somebody who's trading, because the volatility, now I'm not necessarily speaking of today, but when stocks get volatile and begin to move, I mean, that's part of what we want to see as traders. It's just a matter of how much do we want to see. Certainly is the case. Okay. So if we've got any other questions out there, go ahead and pop them in. We have an event coming up. It is with Mr. David Mitchell. He's never taught this event live online before. In fact, he's never taught it live at all. So this will be the very first time. It is a free event. I'm going to pop the link into the comments here. I can go ahead and close this again. I'm going to pop this link in here for you guys. This is a course from David Mitchell. That is our founder and CEO. He's going to teach something that he calls it the truth will set us free Obviously, that didn't start with David Mitchell, did it? But that is what the course is called. He's going to come in and he's going to give us some amazing, I've heard this on recording. I've never personally heard this live myself, but he's going to teach from the scriptures on finances for you and me. Again, giving us wisdom from the scripture to get us from a place of not knowing to knowing, from anxiety to abundance, ultimately looking at specifically, most of this is looking at some interesting perspectives on debt and money. I think you guys want to catch this. You really do. Give you some time to see David teach as well. It's a treat. So if you click on that link, you can join him live and it is free to join. So make sure you do that. Troy, I see you there. I thank my coaches for this knowledge. That's the thing. This is what we call time compression. I talked to several Tradeway students on the phone earlier today. You know, some people are just really busy. Maybe that's you out there tonight. You know, Blair, I'm just really busy. I really want to do something like this. I just don't know if I'm going to be able to find the time. Well, the time that we can make, I would say, can be maximized when you give yourself access to mentorship that's already done a lot of the work for you. That is how you can take the little bit of your time and say, all right, if I'm only going to have an hour here and there, I definitely don't want to do it on my own. I want to do it with somebody who's already done a lot of the footwork, done the time compression, and can just impart to me what it is that I need to know. That's what this is all about. So we're going to be back here for you on Thursday. I actually am going to be joining you guys on Wednesday this week as well for our Word Wednesday. Jeffrey is out of town, so he will not be hosting. I will be hosting this week, so that'll be fun for me to be a part of that with you guys as well. Click on the link there. Join that class with David. Thankful to have all you on here as always. Back on Wednesday. Stock talk, hot or not. We're always looking at stocks and going, hey, is this hot? Is this something you should know about? Is this something that you should wait on? We're going to talk about that on Thursday at the same time right here, Facebook, YouTube, as always. And until then, I will see you guys on the other side.